Kathy Reichs is joining me with Here's What We Know. And listen, your what do they call it? The CV? Is that what they call it now? I don't even know what it means, but your resume is what we used to call it.
CV is curriculum vitae, I think, but doesn't matter.
That's so above my pay grade. That's just way beyond what I'm capable of. But I encourage people to go to kathyreichs.com to see it because it's truly impressive. I mean, most people don't pack things into a life like you have. I mean, come on, honestly.
Well, I've gotten around. It, keeps me off the streets.
Were you always that driven? I mean, tell me about the 8-year-old Kathy Reichs.
Oh, I was probably a real pain in the ass as a kid. I was very stubborn. I was very curious about science and nature. I collected snakes and bugs and things like that. I didn't want to be playing with dolls. I wanted to be outside. I think I was a leader. I don't know. What do you want to know?
No, it's just because it's just I mean, was there anything there to show? Right? I mean, so many people do. I mean, it's some people at age they're focused, and you can look back, and I mean, Mozart was Mozart at 8, right? But was Einstein at 8? I don't know. It seemed like it kind of developed later on,
Okay,
and so that's why I was asking.
I was not Einstein at 8, I'm sure.
I don't know. I mean, you're only, what is it? Only 100. You're one of only 100 certified by the American Forensic Anthropology Society.
Yeah, I'd have to get out the list and count. I don't know how many certificates have been earned. Some people have died off. There may be just 100 of us right now. When I got my certificate, my certificate's number 36. So that shows how few there were back in the day when I actually sat for my board exams and became certified.
I'm sitting here in Silicon Valley, and if you're number 36 at anything, wow, that means you're just doing really well. If you're 36 at Google,
or it means I'm really old, one or the other.
No, I found you. I read the first Deja Dead novel, and I found you and read all of them. And I used to, because at the time, I would ride an exercise bike, and you know how dull it is.
Yes,
so I would take a book. That was my secret. I would take a book and read. And I found Deja Dead and just fell in love with the character. I remember the first scene. I can't remember all the books, but I remember the first scene because it just kind of stunned me. Somebody's skull was laying in a bucket, and you were talking about how they died. And I'm like,
putting it back together. She was gluing the pieces of the skull.
Yes.
And at the time I started, I was doing that. I was working on a case where I was gluing, and it's tedious. Where you hold it, you have to glue it and then hold it and hold it and hold it, and then easily put it in the sand. There's probably a better way today, but.
Maybe so, but it just captured me because, I grew up fans of the mysteries. I grew up fans of John D. McDonnell and, Agatha Christie and all the mysteries. And with mysteries, it's all about the why and the who.
Yes.
What you did was about the how, and you got to get grisly. I mean, and it was so much fun because there is that part of the human psyche that goes, wow, they had a piece of metal shot through their head. Really? Ooh, what was that like?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I do put in detail. I never put in anything just for grisly sensationalism. It has to inform the reader and move the story forward. But I don't shy away from, because I think my readers want to know what it's like at a crime scene or what it's like in an autopsy room. So I do give them details.
Yeah, and it's without the risk of, especially with social media. We didn't have the YouTube back in 1997, right?
Yes.
Now you can see things that probably nobody should see. Then it was still the theater of the mind. And I was captivated by how these things happen and what a crime scene was like and how you steel yourself. And I know you've been asked that a million times, but how do you steel yourself for what you're about to see?
Well, you get used to it. It takes a certain psychological makeup. It's not for everybody. That not just what you see, but what you smell and what you handle and what you dig into. You just have to be of a psychological makeup that you can And you have to maintain your objectivity, your scientific distance without getting emotionally involved with each victim because you wouldn't be of any good to them if you became, but you have to still keep in mind that it's a human being and treat that set of remains respectfully and hopefully get a name for that dead person and figure out what happened to them and get them back to their family.
That's what I love about The Bone Hacker, the latest novel, is that, and I love how you have a number of little subplots that go back and forth and through and out, and the last book had the same thing, but this was. I loved how it was still bothering you, a case from early on. Well, I should say you, Tempe, a case from early on that she had never been able to let go because the identity was never there.
Yeah. Those are the ones that bother you. For a while, for decades, I had a little child in bones in my lab that we never could get identified. Eventually, by a fluke, 20 years down the road, I finally got that little boy ID'd.
Wow. That's got to be such a weird sense of relief, sadness, and gratitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I have to, because I love it, and I wrote myself a note. I wanted to ask you, where do you come up with some of the things that you talk about? And here, I'm going to tell you, because I wrote it down. I wanted to make sure I did not get it wrong
Okay.
whatsoever. My favorite thing, and I said, okay, I got to ask her straight off the bat. Son of a freaking zombie bitch and its spawn.
I don't know. It seemed appropriate for the character and the scene. I just started out small and then made it bigger.
I love Tempe, and that's the thing. The difference to me between Tempe in the books and the TV show is the Tempe in the books has always been whip smart, funny, and very social. And I did not expect that. Some of those things, and you've always thrown in a line that I'm not expecting. I'm not expecting, a eunuch at an orgy, right?
Yeah.
All the enthusiasm of a eunuch at an orgy. Oh my gosh. And when I would just sit back and laugh, and of course my family, my wife is like, what are you doing? And because she knows I'm reading a book called The Bone Hacker.
Right. And that piece. Well, that's one of the reasons I agreed to option my character to the people that I did, to Hart Hansen and Barry Josephson for the show that became Bones, is we were all on the same page. I had other offers and they just weren't right. But one of the things we agreed on, we wanted humor in the show. I put humor in the books. Well, we wanted to put humor in the show, and that's hard. But when every book is dealing with violent death, every episode is dealing with violent death. How do you handle that? It has to be very delicately done.
Interjecting the humor in it. And I love the way the humor comes from the characters and not the event, even though some of the bones, some of it in the TV show you find are humorously handled because it's just kind of like, wow. But in the books, because I always tell everybody that don't confuse the two because they're so totally different. But the humor, especially in the TV show, she's socially awkward. She was the first Sheldon Cooper. She was the one who would say stuff and it was like totally inappropriate and how she was saying it. But that's not the character in the book. And it's kind of funny. How did you decided to go to those divergent paths with that?
Yeah, I think of book Tempe and TV Tempe. Book Tempe is older. She's in the Carolinas and Montreal. She's more socially suave, shall we say, polished than Book Tempe. Book Tempe's younger. She's taller. She's in Washington, D.C. at the Jeffersonian. And she's very awkward. Part of that is the way Emily chose to play the character. And I think if you watched all 12 seasons, 246 episodes, you'd be blown away by how Emily evolved that character over time, how that character grew and changed over time.
Well, it was kind of cool I think it was on TBS or TNT, whoever does it the other day. They played the pilot episode and the final episode back
My
to back.
goodness. I would like to have seen that. I remember filming the pilot. We were so excited. And then a couple of years way into the series, we looked at the pilot and we just about cringed. It was like, oh, really?
It was fun because it showed her coming back and her ex-husband showing up in her apartment and
Yeah,
Booth and her getting mad at Booth. And then the final episode where they're a couple and she's questioning, am I smart? And if I'm not smart, then what am I? And
yeah,
going through that whole change,
yeah.
it played well. It tied in. There was no cringe. It was
Good.
like you could see the evolution.
We had brilliant writers. I'm not one of these authors who's going to say they took my work and they destroyed it. I had a wonderful experience. Everybody from the on camera talent to the producers to the crew to, the writers, everybody just was delightful. And we didn't have a lot of drama. We didn't have a lot of tension on the set like some shows do. And I think that's partly why we lasted as long as we did.
Well, the key is it being a TV series, isn't it? I mean, if you take a book, Stephen King's the big example. If you take a book and then they turn it into what they want it into, there's no recourse. But with the TV show, because you were creating something that was uniquely the TV show.
Right. Right.
And you even wrote an episode, and you had that process was fascinating. You had to submit a script.
Yes, and that was I wrote multiple episodes, and that was shocking. The first time I wrote it, first of all, you do what's called breaking the story. You go into the writer's room, not right now, of course. You go into the writer's room, and there's a big white board, which is terrifyingly blank, and for our show, divided into six acts. And then you just start throwing out ideas and you start brainstorming and jotting stuff up. And by the end of a week or two, you've got a very, very rough outline um, for your episode. For example, when I wrote, I think it was The Witch in the Wardrobe, I was given two directives. One is open with two skeletons, and two is get Hodgins and Angela married. That's it. Otherwise, I could write, whatever storyline, whatever plot I chose to write. So it was different from writing a book in that you had to get approval at multiple stages. It's also different in that it boils down to dialogue. You don't have to put any description in there because the viewer sees that on the screen. But the other different thing is when you turn it in, the final script, they change everything. And the first time that happened to me, I thought, what did I do wrong? I went in, I talked to Hart. What did I do wrong? He said, no. We rewrite every single script that the writers turn in because it may be economics. You've written a scene that's terribly expensive to film, or maybe an actor that you'd counted on having is unavailable. There are a lot of different reasons that a script might be changed.
How much fun was it to write for the TV show when you got to write characters who aren't in the books? Like, I would think Hodges would have to be,
Yeah.
my favorite books, my favorite characters were Hodges and Sweets. I like those and I loved Angela too, but Hodges and Sweets they were gonna say something. Hodges with his attitude and Sweets who talk about an evolution of a character. I mean, that had to be fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And Hodgins was a lot of fun to write and also to be with. Hodgins is TJ Tyne is the best hugger I've ever met. I mean, he gives incredible bear hugs too. He's just a really fun person, sweet, fun, kind person, as is Emily. Emily Deschanel is the most generous, kind person I've ever met.
Well, I sit back and I enjoy it. I've always wanted to ask you, who would play Ryan in a movie? Or because you got Ceiling Booth, okay, David Boreanaz, he's not ugly.
No, but he's not Ryan. He's not the way
Exactly.
I was doing an interview, I think, with Australia way back when Deja Dead came out. And the interview asked if there was a movie, who would you want to play Ryan? Just as you asked. And I said, I think Rex Harrison. And there was this pause, and then we finished the interview and hung up. And I thought, oh, you idiot. You meant Harrison Ford, not Rex.
Not my fair lady, Rex Harrison.
Rex Harrison was dead at the time. Yeah, anyway, that was.
Even Rex Harrison in his prime wouldn't be Ryan.
No, but Harrison Ford in his prime would.
Harrison Ford, if he could pull off the French suave.
Well, there's that.
And because Ryan, you talk about being able. I love Ryan. Is here comes Tempe home from this horrific crime scene smelling like death all over, and I'm cooking this masterful meal, and I'll wait for you to take a shower, mon cher.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I will say I will be romantic with you, even though you've had death all over you
Yeah.
all
Well, that's
day.
probably why he wanted her to take the shower. But
And hey, take it easy on Ryan. All right, you scared me last book. Just take it
yeah.
easy on Ryan.
Okay. All right. All right.
Because if you haven't read it, I'm telling you, because he's just so much fun with you. And when you scared me like that, and you do that, you do put characters in jeopardy. That I never know.
That's the definition of a thriller, is that your protagonist or those close to your protagonist have to come under threat. One of the
And,
components of a thriller versus just a mystery.
well, Tempe has her. You put Tempe into way too much danger too.
She puts herself in, more so in the early books. She would go out and do crazy things in the early books, things that, like digging up a body by herself. I would
Yeah.
never do that. The police with whom I work would not appreciate me doing that. The evidence would be tainted. She doesn't do that anymore, but she did that. She did that in the first book.
Well, I thought the Bone Hacker, which is the latest, I enjoyed the heck out of it. I read it in probably 4 days because I was just devouring it. In
Good.
big chunks at a time, because it reads easy, and it's wonderful to read someone. You've gotten better with age, as far as like your ability to paint pictures with the least amount of words, and some of the things, your descriptions of some of the sunsets. I'm like, there's a master at their job right
No,
there.
thank you. Well, I never write a setting is a really strong component of my books. It's almost like another character in my books. So I'll never write about a place I haven't been. I've sent Tempe. She's gotten around. She's been to Yellowknife up in the Northwest Territories. She's been to Guatemala. She's been to where has she been? I went to Afghanistan on a USO tour, so she's been to Afghanistan. So this time, the Turks and Caicos seemed like a very exotic environment, and they're my favorite islands in the Caribbean. So I went there because I think you have to go to a place to absorb. You could Google Earth it, but you're not going to get the smells and the sounds and the tastes, the flavor of the food, and yeah. So hopefully, my sunset was based on the script was based on a sunset I had seen.
Well, I love how much you love food, or Tempe does, right?
Me too.
Except puffy food. Okay, that blew me away. I don't do puffy food.
Well, that's me. Yeah, I don't like things like omelets. People go, oh, it's really light and fluffy. I don't like it light and fluffy.
I had never heard it described that way, and it cracked me up. I don't like puffy food. And you're like going, what in the world is a puffy food? And then you describe the omelet.
Like Cheetos, the big puffy Cheetos.
Yes.
If it crunches, it's okay.
Yeah, but it's just fun to me, and just the way you weave those in. And okay, I may have been reading the inside joke, but I found it hilarious. I'm like, I'm hoping I was right when you're talking to when Tempe's talking to Harry, her sister, and you ask about the latest boyfriend's name, and then you ask if it's Benton.
She can't keep them straight.
Well, I just love the little slide. I look at it as the side thing of, Patricia Cornwell does the same thing. And of course, Kate Scarpetta's boyfriend's name or husband's name is Benton. And I'm like, okay,
oh my gosh, I didn't know that was, I thought he was a Benson. Is he a Benton?
No, it's Benton.
Oops. Oh, well.
Hey, listen, I'll give you an excuse. Tell everybody you're just that clever. So from now on, you go, of course, I'm Kathy flipping Reichs.
Yeah.
Of course I gave, Patricia Cornwell a little nudge in the ribs.
But he wasn't named Benton, the boyfriend, as it turned out, right?
I know. I just saw that and I read into it because, hey, I'm a book nerd. I'm a book nerd, and I freely admit it. And I love books, and I love the textile thing. And I run, and I love to listen to audiobooks. Do you still run?
I do that. Well, I fast walk on the beach and I do. I put in my AirPods. Is that what they're called? And
yes.
Listen to audiobooks. Or when I'm driving, I listen to audiobooks.
Well, see, that's my thing is if I'm listening to music, it becomes a measurement of time. right? You just start going, I need to listen to 10 more songs or 12 more songs, and then I'm done. But
Mm,
if somebody's telling you a story, it takes away the time measurement,
yeah.
because now you're in. Now you're okay. I need a couple of more chapters just because I don't want to end
Yeah.
right here.
No, and first thing you know, you've run 20 miles, right?
It's something like, well, those days are gone, but I could still get 8 or 9 out, which is, at my age, that's enough humble brag for me today.
Okay. Any age, that's good.
Well, no, some of them are like, I also have to say that if you guys haven't seen, I have already recommended your TED Talk to at least 10 people I know.
Oh my goodness, that was a while ago. When
I
was
know,
it?
but it was brilliant. It's
Oh,
changed the narrative, and it
change
is
the
nothing
narrative.
short of brilliant.
Yeah, because it was a student, a very heavily student audience. So, or
Well,
was the whole TED Talk thing change the narrative? That
yeah,
was
it
a
was the whole TED Talk thing was change the narrative,
change the narrative. Yeah,
and you talked about your career path
yeah,
and how many times you have literally just, I'm going to turn the wheel this way.
yeah. That's true. I started out in academics, and then I started doing forensic anthropology casework, and then based on that, I wrote commercial fiction, and then went into the world of TV production. So, kept taking side paths.
Well, and it all stemmed from your ability to write. To me, that's what I take from it. And whether your papers, and I can't imagine how many scientific papers you've published.
Well, it's in that resume, that CV.
Yeah, exactly.
You have trouble sleeping. Right?
What are you doing? I'm just reading some really weird anthropological
Really
forensic.
double osteology stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that can do to get me to sleep even more is probably glue a skull back together.
Yeah, that'll do it.
If I did that, then it would be everything I ever needed. Being able to write has been the basis for you, and I find it interesting. Your kids are, I call them kids, but your grown children are writers too.
Two of the three. My oldest daughter, Carrie, writes contemporary women's fiction. She's a lawyer, but doesn't practice law. My son is a lawyer, but doesn't practice law. And he and I wrote a series of young adult books, the Virals series. We did 6 books together. And then he dumped me and signed his own contract. And so now he writes middle school. He's got the Dark Deep series and the Nemesis series and another series. I don't know. He just did a graphic novel on, what was it? Lex and Kent, I think it was.
Oh, well, Clark Kent and Lex Luthor?
It was Superman. Clark.
Superman.
Yeah,
Clark
yeah,
Kent and Lex
yeah.
Luthor.
That's it.
His ultimate enemy is Lex Luthor.
He just did a graphic novel on that. Anyway, so those two are writers. My middle daughter has a real job. She has a master's degree in nursing and teaches nursing at a university.
Isn't it funny that they both went down the law path and got there and said, nah, not so much?
I know, $200,000 for law school, but yeah.
Have they, because they obviously saw you, do they copy not what you're doing? Did they learn and copy any of the process that you
No,
do?
no, they're both completely different. My daughter, if she's in a good mood, she'll write the love scene. If she's in a bad mood, she'll write the death scene. I can't do that. I mean, I start with chapter 1 and work my way through the book. My son is the classic outliner. He has big whiteboards and color-coded cards, and he outlines every scene, every act, every character. I don't do that. He's a plotter. I'm a pantser. No, he's a pantser. I'm a plot. No, he's a plotter. I'm more of a pantser.
But now you're very methodical in it, right? Though, I mean, you go through it all the time, and you start. I mean, because I don't know how you would do it outside of chapter 1. I mean, I would assume you'd have to get the plot and figure it out in your head and how it's going to be done and stuff like that. But then you write, and then you rewrite, and you rewrite.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that's what authors have told me before. It's just,
Yep.
it's not about the writing; it's about the rewriting.
Rewriting, exactly. The tweaking and the polishing and the editing and the cutting and yeah.
Wow. And do you do most of that yourself, or do you have an
Well,
editor? You
no,
do
of
all
course I
of it.
have an editor. I have a very, very good editor at Scribner. But when I turn it in, probably because Deja Dead, the first book, I just wrote it on my own. I didn't have a publisher. So I knew when I turned it in, it had to be the best it could possibly be. So I edited and edited and edited and edited before I mailed it in, which you did in those days. You mailed in hard copy. And I still do it that way so that when I turn my book in, it's pretty clean. And the editing process for me is usually pretty painless. But I do have great editors.
And you have to be just so flippin' organized. I mean, I can't imagine you. Well, look at your background. You are organized. You don't get to have a doctorate in what you're doing without being an organized individual.
I'm fairly organized, yes.
Yeah.
At Reed Animal Hospital, they treat your pet as if it was their own. Now, I'm a very satisfied customer. I can tell you they mean that. It's not a chain. It truly is about helping you and your pet enjoy life together. Dr. David Reed and his entire staff take the time to get to know you and your pet. I can tell you what I like. He's helped me better understand what my dog Luna needs and how I can take care of her more efficiently and kindly. Find them online at reedanimalhospital.com. 2 locations, Saratoga and Campbell. Little secret from me to you, Dr. Reed actually gives you his cell number so he can answer your questions and concerns. They really are committed to you and your pet. reedanimalhospital.com.
I'm with Mike and Brenda Council with another real Mike Council plumbing and rooter story. Let's talk about the early days. What was it like?
Well, when we first started, the phone was by the bed.
So just the two of you?
Exactly.
And I would answer the emergency
She'd
calls
answer.
in the middle of the night. I'd wake up and answer them.
2:00, I'm headed out the door.
So 30 years ago.
30 years and 6 months.
But I hear Mike Council Plumbing might have had its beginnings when you were, what, a kid?
Yeah, I grew up in a little one-room shack, and we had an outhouse out back.
An outhouse?
That's correct.
Oh, my.
And ended up with a great appreciation for indoor plumbing.
I guess. And when you finally got it?
It was a great day.
Since 1993, the people of San Jose and the South Bay have trusted Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter for all their plumbing needs. From emergencies like a drain backup or water leak, maybe you need a new water heater or fixture installed, a gas appliance hooked up. Give Mike Council a call at 408-217-1002 or go to mcplumbing.com, an official partner of the San Jose Sharks.
You're in clean hands with Mike Council Plumbing and Rooter.
I was talking to Jonathan Mayberry, and he told me with his books, he said, I will simply never run out of ideas. I will never run out of ideas. I'm wondering, how about you with Tempe?
Oh, I'll never run out of ideas. I've worked on so many cases when I was still actively doing forensic work, but also I've constantly got my antennae out for things, for whatever I'm reading or talking to colleagues or reading the forensic journals or attending the forensic meetings and listening to presentations. I'm always on the lookout for story ideas.
And you've never stopped doing that. You still go to all of those things. You
I do.
still be.
Well, during COVID, they didn't happen, of course, but
Yeah.
everything's geared back up now, and I do attend. It's the American Academy of Forensic Sciences.
I haven't asked that question. How did COVID affect, because yours is a single solitary profession when it comes to writing a book?
When it comes to the writing, I kind of enjoyed COVID because I went to my beach house. My 2 daughters were there and 4 of my grandkids. And we just had a little kibbutz thing going for however many months we were all COVIDed in. And I got a lot of writing done during that time period because you couldn't go anywhere.
Well, and I never did anything from a home studio. Everything I did was at a studio. That's the change. My life has become a little bit more like yours. And I think most of us have. Of course, now everybody's waiting to come back, but I still think this will always be a part of how we do things now.
It has really changed touring. You used to go city to city to city to city, like 15 cities in 2 weeks. And then you would go to the TV station, go to the radio station, go to the newspaper to be interviewed. Now it was a very brief physical tour, 4 cities. And I'm doing a lot of it this way from from the comfort of my home.
Well, and that's got to be nice, to say you don't have to, and not in the age of COVID, you have far less colds and flus now, don't you? Because you're not interacting with people.
Probably. I don't sound like it with the cough, but yeah, probably.
Oh, no.
And you save so much time. I'm actually able to write, this is my last interview today, and I will get back to the book. I'm writing book 23 right now. So I was going to say, if I have to go back to a hotel and then spend the night in the hotel and then get up and go to an airport, I probably wouldn't be motivated to write.
How many hours will you sit down? Like today, typical thing, this afternoon. When you sit down, how long will you plan on writing, or is there a plan?
Well, a typical day, I wouldn't be doing all these interviews.
Yeah.
But I try to get at it by 8 or 8:30 and stay with it until 2:30. Then I break and have some lunch and do other things.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine that. I write a little. I'm not writing a book, just little subsets. And I'll
Yeah.
sit back and write for 45 minutes and be like, okay, I never want to do that again until I have to next week. And I'm writing just something that'll take you 4 minutes to read. And then it's like, I can't imagine sitting down and going, okay, do you go, I need this many pages? I need this many pages today?
Yeah, I don't think in terms of page. Definitely don't think in terms of words. Some people say I'm going to do 1,200 words in a day or whatever. I don't think that way at all for the daily output or for the length of the manuscript. I think in terms of chapters and each chapter is a certain number of pages. And if I can get through 1 or 2 pages in a day, that's a really good day.
Wow. See, I just love that. And the fact that you've written so many of these books and the character still continues to evolve. And like I said, I always look forward to it because you're going to say something in there that not only I'm going to learn, but you're going to entertain the heck out of me, and I get a kick by how much Tempe enjoys Ryan. I know I'm call me a sap, but you can tell he loves her, but I love how fond she is of him.
Well, they're in a pretty good place. In the last book, Cold, Cold Bones, they're finally cohabitating. She is remodeling her townhouse in Charlotte. They both sold their condos in Montreal and bought a flashy new high-rise condo. So they're cohabitating on both ends of their geographically complex relationship.
Which stems from your very own.
Well, I commute. I go back and forth, right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you do the North Carolina to Montreal thing, which is kind of you don't find two people. You don't find a lot of people who share those as cities that they spend time in.
They're very different language, different climate, different culture. Really.
When did you learn French?
Oh, back in the early 90s, I guess. I just decided to take a French 101 class, and just because I thought an educated person should speak French. And then this offer came through for something called National Faculty Exchange at a faculty meeting. It's a program whereby a professor from one institution changes places with a professor from another institution. And there was a gentleman at one of the English language universities in Montreal who wanted to come to UNC Charlotte. So I thought, may we? I've had one class. I can do this. So I applied.
One class.
I had one class, and I never went to the language labs because it conflicted with my teaching schedule. But yeah, so off I went to Montreal.
Oh my gosh. And it clicked for you as far as the language. I took French in college, and because I was an English lit major and you had to take a foreign language. And at the end, the final exam was you had to do a 5 or 10 minute speech, right, in French. I got up the night before, I wrote out jokes in French, and I stood up and told jokes.
Okay.
And the professor was so enamored of having someone not going, mon mère is, mon père is, comes down, and he would help me finish the jokes. He'd be like, oh, and at the end, he pulled me aside. And he goes, I know you can't speak French even a little bit, but I loved how you thought differently. So I'm going to give you a B and get out of my class.
Okay.
No return, no rendezvous for you. It just never made sense to me. I could not,
French is hard. It's really hard. Spanish is easy. If it's written, you pronounce it. French, there are all these letters in the words that they have no purpose. You don't pronounce them. So
Well, yeah, and then the rules change depending on which letters in, going into what letters, and all the other stuff. It's like I don't get it, but I enjoy, like when you're in when Tempe is in Montreal and they're speaking. You go ahead and tell yourself, all right, she's writing in English, but they're speaking in French.
right, right. And if I use a French term, I always identify it. What am I trying to say? Interpret it, translate it within the next line or two.
And when and I love when you have to. How do you know when you have to explain something? Right? When you're saying something and you go, I
Yeah.
better throw in a definition here.
Yeah. Sometimes that's my editor. Sometimes I will take it for granted that people know what, I don't know, a metacarpal is. And he'll say, you maybe use a simpler term or explain that. So he does
Well,
ring me in on that.
I just find it, again, my quotes, what you did. I found another one I wrote down because I wrote these down because I love them so much. My id was logging minutia like a court reporter on steroids. I'm like, I just love the quantity, and again, I'm asking you to share creative, I talk to songwriters all the time, and I always tell them songwriting is literally catching smoke and showing it to you, which is what you're doing. But it's just hilarious to me that you would come up with that. Did you hear it, or was it just something that you just said?
I try to make things up. I try not to use cliches ever. There may be a few that sneak in, but I do try to not use cliches or.
Well, as you can tell, fan. I'm a fan to just go through it and through it like that. I also love how you incorporate weather, especially in the last few books. Is like there's you've dealt with hurricanes and blizzards and snows, and I mean, it's fun to write weather.
It is fun to write weather. I think so. And here is part of the opening of the story. The man is struck by lightning up on the bridge. We're all watching the fire. Well, they're all watching the fireworks, and Tempe and Ryan get caught in the storm in a small boat on the river, and he gets struck by lightning. And that's how she's brought into the case to investigate who he is, this guy that has no idea.
And we found out that Tempe doesn't like some of Ryan's friends.
Yeah, she didn't like the guy with the boat. She was not very forgiving about that. But, in his defense, it was a very nice night when they went out. And this storm was a microburst. It was very sudden and very violent.
Well, my first thought, and it could be very wrong, but I'm like, oh boy, that guy dies in a few books.
Well, she has said she's not going to see him anymore. So
yeah, well, she's not going to say, or rather, he's probably not going to see her anymore. Just float that idea out. Book number 27.
Yeah, yeah.
Bones of Friends, something along those lines.
Former friends, right?
I have so enjoyed, and I know your voice is shot, so I'm going to give you a break on this. And I know I'm the last one today, but I've so enjoyed it because I'm such a fan. I've loved your work, and I will continue to love your work. I'm so excited about the next one. The lady who reads your audiobooks is amazing. I've listened to a number of those on the rights, and I think she captures Tempe for me.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Good. She's done a lot of my books.
Well,
many.
When you used to do the physical appearances, would you read the books? Would you do a reading?
No, that's a lot of work. No.
But that was in the past. Did you ever do that? Did you ever do readings?
No, I have never read. You mean read my own books for the audience?
Yeah, in front of an audience.
No. I've done brief readings in front of audiences. I don't like to read. I don't like to be read to, and I don't like to read aloud. But I'll do it if I have to.
I have a guilty pleasure, but I will read some things aloud simply because it makes me put in the inflections more. And I'm just saying by myself, right?
Yeah.
So like I will read because I want to get the inflections, because when I'm reading, I tend to read fast. Right? Your brain's just absorbing. When you read out loud, you start feeling the pace of the pentameter.
True. That's a good point.
So that's just me. Well, I am so thrilled. Please, folks, The Bone Hacker is the latest. And I hope we do this again on the next one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Call my publicist. Yes.
I will. I have so enjoyed this, and I thank you for your time. KathyReichs.com. Check it out. Amazing. And just such an honor to spend time with you this morning.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye now.